You're listening to Pixelated Audio. This is Expansion Pack 19.
All right, welcome back to Pixelated Audio, your bi-weekly video game music and retro gaming podcast. We're your hosts. I'm Brian, and this is James.
Hey.
And today we've got a special guest with us, a local listener of the show and a video game music lover. This is Gene. Welcome. Thanks for coming on and talking with us today.
Hey, thanks for having me.
So what we've done today is we're doing another expansion pack. It's, again, I don't know your guys' picks. You guys don't know mine.
Right.
And we have a little bit of a theme today. So rather than just a bunch of random music, we are looking at DOS games or Windows games from the 90s. And we're going to kind of stick in that realm.
Yeah,
so I'm excited.
It should be fun to hear like a whole bunch of stuff that's kind of crammed into a decade and a system, because normally it's just random, anything goes, and we've been talking about doing more of a themed style expansion pack, so we're excited to see how this one turns out.
Yeah, and this is actually Gene's idea. So Gene, why don't you tell us kind of a little bit about yourself and give us an idea of what kind of stuff you're into, what kind of video game music inspires you, I guess.
Sure, yeah. I've been a gamer for many years. I grew up with a 386 all the way on up to now. Had a Nintendo.
You still use a 386 now?
No, unfortunately. But
I was going to say bravo, because
one of the reasons why I wanted to pick this theme was because I noticed there was a lot of these really great sound chips and things, and that's thinking, well, what about us, the people that grew up with these kind of crappy second-rate computers? We still had sound and music, so it's kind of been on my mind for a long time. But other than that, just been a big fan of the show, and I met Brian in September.
Right.
Back at a MAG event, MAG West sort of thing.
Yeah, it's coming out here for the first time.
Yeah.
So there's a little kind of a get-together planning party.
Yeah. I think I was like extremely sick that weekend. And
yeah, you were like on your deathbed.
Yeah.
And so you couldn't make it out. But we met up and kind of talked about, different sound chips and some different music. And then,
Yeah, here I am.
Here you are. Awesome. So tell us about this track that we came in with. We haven't played a beeper track yet,
right,
so I'm pretty excited.
So I think most people here are going to be familiar with the Monkey Island theme, as written by Michael Land.
Oh, is that what that was?
Yeah. It's a really well-known track, but I think most people, by the time this game came out, probably weren't listening to it to the basic PC speaker, which is, in the early days, they just needed some sound so you could know that there was something wrong with your computer, and programmers are like, well, this is what we got, so we got to make some music on it. You get one channel, square wave, that's it.
Yep. Yeah, well, I still think the track was pretty cool.
Oh, yeah. I liked how minimal it was. It's very punchy because it's just a beeper, but it still had like a fun little jive to it. I liked it.
Yeah, it still had that Monkey Island theme.
Oh, yeah.
You could, even though it's one channel, one square wave, you could still make it out. It's pretty clear. Now, the thing that I really like about this is that I haven't heard the beeper version before, so this is kind of rad.
Yeah, I actually only listened to it fairly recently because, who wants to listen to that? But
we kind of do.
Well, it's like, when you have a granddaddy sound card, you want to listen to it in the full, beautiful sound. But it is really cool that LucasArts was able to get it out in that way. The people, the whole SCUM system, the programming, they've always really known how to get good sound out of pretty limited hardware.
Mm-hmm. Well, and I think too that a lot of people, like you said, by this time, everybody wanted to use their fancy Sound Blaster 16s or their Adlib cards, and so the PC speaker was kind of making its way to the wayside and didn't get really a whole lot of attention. But bravo for LucasArts for actually including it in to make it available and accessible for everybody to at least get something. So you're not just playing like this point and click adventure without anything. At least you have something.
Yeah, because I mean, when you're on a console, you have a set limitation, you have a set sound chip, and that was it. You just made it and you knew that it was going to work, whereas you don't know what people have in their computers. Some people, like you said, have really high-end stuff, and some people are like, I just opened the box and I'm starting to play and I don't know what's going on.
It's a really big difference between this and like the MT32 or something version, where you have a full-blown dedicated MIDI device. So, no, it's pretty awesome.
Yeah, what's really cool is they actually went through the trouble of making a number of tracks. A lot of these old games that only used PC speaker might just have the title track and that's it. But they actually had about 5 or 6 tunes, and they don't sound too bad, actually.
Yeah.
Very cool. And the version that we're listening to today is actually emulated through DOSBox. So we're going to be, kind of, I guess that's the only way. I don't have a PC speaker. Well, no, I might have one laying around, so I'm sure I do somewhere. But I don't think hardware recording is going to work out too well.
Sure.
Anyway, so what we're going to do today is Gene's got 4 tracks. And James and I each have 2 tracks. So we're going to kind of go like a yo-yo back and forth.
Yeah.
So Gene just played a track. James, you want to go next?
Sure. Yeah, I can go with my first track. So the first track I have is called Lagoon Classic, and it's from the game Fury of the Furries.
Awesome. Let's check it out.
You just heard Lagoon Classic from Fury of the Furries by Frédéric Motte.
Awesome, dude. I mean, we've heard from Motte on the show before.
Right.
Good old El Mobo.
Well, and I'm sure
Moby.
I'm sure that he's been on your side project quite a bit too.
Oh yeah, Impulse Project. In fact, the episode that you were on, we played a track from him. It was the Canilla Cook. That
okay.
epic long, like 8-minute track or whatever. Yeah. So excellent composer. Really cool. Why'd you pick this track?
This game actually looks really interesting to me. I never played it. I didn't have a computer in my house until I was like a junior in high school or something like that. So, and I missed out on all this stuff. And I was just going through the list and I was like, wow, this looks really kind of silly and weird. And started listening to the music and was just blown away. And then when I started looking into the game more, I was like, oh man, this is so cool. So, this track was really awesome. And before we started listening to the track, we found out that Gene, actually, this was on his list, the same exact song. He was going to play this today. So thankfully, he has a bunch of extra tracks. So that's the first time this has ever happened on the show. So.
We've had like the exact same track.
Yeah, exact same track. And there's quite a few tracks in this game, too.
It wasn't even one of my backups. It was like one of the ones I was going to play as my main.
Yeah. Good thing I got to go with the second track of the day.
Awesome. What are your thoughts about this track?
I just
why do you pick it? Because you picked it too.
First of all, I mean, I love Frédéric Motte's stuff, but this particular track, it starts off with this really mellow groove, and it just keeps building and adding more parts to it as it goes on, and it's got this just great calming energy, and the soloing that starts off at like 1 minute and goes for another minute or two is just insane.
Yeah, it's like the solo that never dies.
Yeah.
It just keeps going.
Well, and when I first listened to it, I was like, man, this composer must have some type of Amiga background because it felt very much like an Amiga track to me. And lo and behold, he's like one of the biggest demo scene composers ever. So.
Yeah, very well known. God, what a great track, though. It's got like this kind of new age jazziness to it. I like it. It doesn't really sound like a lot of his other stuff, like his demo scene stuff. It's very different. And then hearing him do it, through the YM3812 this is so different for what I'm used to too, because I'm used to hearing his mods, So very cool.
Yeah. So before we move on to the next track, I have a little bit about the game and about the composer and stuff like that, because even if you're not into Amiga demo scene music or PC music, you've probably heard his stuff before.
Right.
He has done Dark Earth, Nightmare Creatures 1 and 2, Lucky Luke, Western Fever, which we played a Lucky Luke track from the Game Boy version in our last expansion pack.
Right, the Alberto Jose Gonzalez one, yeah.
Yeah, and then he also did Pack in Time for the Game Boy, which has an interesting correlation with this game because Namco actually licensed Fury of the Furries, and this is what Pack in Time is based on. So this became Pack in Time for the Game Boy.
No kidding.
Yeah, so I was like, wow, that's really cool. So he did the soundtrack for that Game Boy version as well.
Weird, because I played Pack in Time, but I've never played this, and I had no idea what this game was about.
This game looks really fun, too.
Wow, no kidding. Like, what do you do?
Yeah, I can actually talk about that a little. It's kind of interesting. You have these 4 little furry characters. They're red, blue, red, and green, and each one has a specific power. So the red one can gnaw, the blue one can breathe in the water, the green one has a rope.
And I think the yellow one shoots something.
Yeah, there's a fireball.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so it's kind of like a puzzle platformer, but a little heavier on the platforming. So you're trying to get through these levels, but you have to switch, and there are these zones where you have to use specific guys when you're in them, so you have to you're limited by which powers you have access to. It's pretty cool.
Yeah,
I see.
And it looks really fun, and when I saw the video for it, I saw the little yellow guy running around, and I was like, okay, he's furry, but I was like, I can totally see why Namco would be like, we could turn this into Pac-Man.
So does it kind of play like a Lost Vikings kind of thing, where you can only use really one character in a certain area, and then when you get to a part where you're roadblocked, you have to switch to the next one? Or is it just like on the fly, you can choose whoever?
You can choose whoever if you're not in one of these locked zones. It's actually the same character that just changes, so you sort of cycle. It's not like multiple at the same time.
Oh, I see.
You're the red one, and then you rotate, now you're the blue one.
Just like a color swap.
Oh,
Yeah.
like Moto King Grand Sword.
Yeah.
Kind of.
Man, what a good track.
Yeah.
From what a weird game.
Yeah, it was 1993, developed and published by Callisto Entertainment, and it was using the YM3812.
Are you ready for, I guess we're going into Gene's pick next. So you can't pick this one.
Yeah, no, I've got plenty others.
All right, what do you got for us?
So, the next track that I have lined up is the title theme from Wacky Wheels by Apogee. You just heard the title track Dream from Wacky Wheels by Mark Klem, published by Apogee.
Awesome.
Nice. This is a really cool track. It's really thick and heavy. There are lots of bass going on, and I was like, man, this would really vibrate your car rolling down the street listening to this. But
Wacky Wheels, man.
Yeah, really nice. Lots of stuff going on, and man, it gets really crazy towards the end.
That the lead is like all over the place, man. I couldn't like pinpoint what it was trying to do. It like kept switching it up, and then it like turned into like two leads, and they kind of like branched off in their own directions. And then that bass when it comes in, that splatty like bleh,
yeah,
like that's so cool. I love that. Oh, very awesome. Why'd you pick this track?
So a lot of reasons. Number one, I think a lot of YM 3812 tracks tend to be a little bit thin or sparse, and this has just got this really full texture. You've got delays, you've got bass. The percussion is just right in the mix, and this is a really hard chip to get percussion sounds out of because you don't have anything else.
Right.
The riffs are cool. It has this really nice, almost spacey sort of vibe to it, and it's for a kart racer kind of game. It just sets the mood for this, like you're driving down the street, driving 70 miles an hour,
just at a slow pace.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's definitely a fun track, all over the place, like you said, and you kind of can't really tell where it's going to go, so you're right on the edge of your seat all the time, which is great for a title menu. I think it just gets you excited. You don't know what's going to happen as soon as you hit start, and it's just going to be so much fun.
Yeah, so I've never played this. Tell us a little bit about Wacky Wheels.
Sure. So the closest comparison, it's a lot like the original Mario Kart. It's a sort of behind-the-back racer, kind of a 2D thing with rotation. So it's not full 3D, but it's that kind of thing where you're going around the track, and the track will actually rotate around you as you're turning, but your character kind of stays in a fixed position. But
right.
There's like obstacles. You can throw bombs and whatever the equivalent of like bananas and shells are. I don't remember all of them.
Right.
It's been many years since I've actually played.
I feel like a lot of DOS games from the 90s tried to recreate on the computer what consoles were doing in their space. You see, like trying to recreate Mario Kart or,
right.
Like Prince of Persia. Like games were trying. Well, Prince of Persia kind of the other way around, but a lot of games kind of tried to, I guess, put on the PC what was already being done on the consoles.
Right.
It's like it's with its own spin on it.
I think there was a lot of back and forth, though. You saw a lot of first-person shooters make their way to consoles, and
that's true.
They were
That's
bigger
true.
on the computer. But I think it was just they saw an opening in the market. Nintendo wasn't really making computer games, so then it's like, hey, we could do something that's similar to Mario Kart. And then if you don't have a Nintendo, you might actually be interested in this, or you might like it better or something. I don't know. So I could definitely see back then it was just so fast and loose, and if you saw something, let's reskin it and make it our own, and it works.
Yeah, and Apogee was putting out all sorts of stuff right at the time. Now, who developed this game?
So this was developed by a small developer called Beavis Soft.
Nice.
Beavis.
But a lot of games were being developed or published by Apogee at the time. They were a pretty big publishing house in the early 90s.
Right. I was almost thinking that teaches typing, the Mavis Beacon, but that's like totally different, not even the right thing. But really cool track, and thanks for putting that on the show, because I was digging it.
Yeah,
I wouldn't have heard it otherwise.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to listen to it some more. I like it a lot.
Yeah, the whole soundtrack's great. There's a lot of really great tracks. It's not just the title.
Yeah, this was one that I kind of skipped over. It was on my list to look at, but I found some tracks that I really liked, and I was like, okay, this game sounds much more familiar to me, so I wanted to kind of skip over it, but kind of sad that I did.
Were you guys reading out of the same book or something?
I don't know.
I was on VGM Rips, but I'll say I actually grew up playing this game, so a little bonus for you. You guys can play on the same keyboard, number pad, and keys if you want to share.
Wow.
Yeah, you
Wow.
can actually play two-player on the same keyboard.
That is really cool.
We might have to do that.
Yeah.
Keyboard buddies.
Yeah.
All right, so are we moving on to the next one?
Yeah,
I think
so
me,
it's
right?
you.
Okay, so the next track that we're going to hear is from a little game called Transport Tycoon Deluxe, and this is the theme song. All right, that funky little tune there was Transport Tycoon Deluxe, and that was the theme music composed by John Broomhall. And this came out for DOS in 1995. The original came out in 1994, but this is the deluxe version. It was developed by Chris Sawyer Productions and published by Microprose Software.
Nice. This is a very funky track, and I was just thinking how this is a very Brian track. It's, slower, really jazzy, has a lot of attitude to it, and I think that a lot of your tracks you pick are like that. I kind of go with the darker, more melancholy sound, and you have that kind of bright, fun, like I can see you walking down the street, just headphones on with a little attitude, a little sway in your step, and so I could definitely see this as your track.
This is totally a Brian track. I loved it. I was just totally digging it when I first started. Now, I've played this game before. I just didn't remember the soundtrack, but I'm surprised I didn't remember it because the whole soundtrack is super jazzy.
Yeah.
A lot of funk, and I think John Broomhall just gets it. He is a very talented musician and just totally understands the genre, I guess.
Yeah, that track just starts off big. It's like, here's a huge intro, and then it just gets right into this really funky. It's so awesome. I think it's easy for people to stumble on this one because if you go on Google and say, what's the best soundtrack from this era, and they're like, you got to listen to Transport Tycoon.
Oh yeah.
So I'm not surprised that this came up in the show. I listened to the whole album like 3 times yesterday.
Yeah.
Nice. So you were going to pick a track from this?
Yeah, I was going to pick another one called Moving On, which is a little bit more mellow, a little bit more laid back.
I know the track.
Yeah.
That was very good.
Well, I'm very glad that I skipped over this one because I did come across it and I was like, you know what? This is a really pretty more popular one, so I'm just going to totally avoid it just to be safe. So I actually really am liking how this episode's going with all the overlap, and it's something so new and fun, and it just kind of adds a little bit more fun to the show.
Right. So a little bit about John Broomhall. He is an English composer and audio producer, also a journalist and a consultant.
Wow.
Yeah, a lot of different things with credits for a dozen different published titles. In the 90s, he did a lot of work for Microprose and Spectrum Holobyte since the two companies merged in 1983, and he was their audio department head. So in charge of a lot of things there. But he was also in a lot of different live bands. There was jazz, blues, funk, all the good stuff that we just talked about. And it's very apparent because this track just screams somebody with some talent. Somebody who knows the genre and understands funk, understands jazz, and his just play with instruments is so clever.
Yeah.
He's also done work on the XCOM series, Sid Meier's Civilization and Colonization, MechWarrior 3, Superman Shadow of the Apocalypse, New International Track and Field, Heavenly Sword, and quite recently, Forza Motorsport 5 for the Xbox One.
Wow.
That's awesome. Yeah.
So he's still in the game. A lot of different production credits and a lot of other sound design and sound work. He's kind of all over the place. This guy's like multi-talented. A lot of different hats this guy wears.
He's got quite an impressive business card.
Yeah, I looked him up. I think he also did the music for A Christmas Carol.
Could be, yeah.
It was listed on his website. I don't know if he did the music or just the arrangement for it, but
yeah, no, I did see that too. I didn't add it in because I wasn't quite sure.
Yeah, but good for him to get into the film business too.
Oh yeah, he's done film stuff. He's done some TV stuff, just all over the place. Some CD album arrangements. I think some orchestra stuff too.
Yeah, I mean, it's not surprising with someone that has such a rich background and lots of instruments, different styles, that's someone that can mix and match and kind of blend with whatever style you're looking for.
Right. Now, so Transport Tycoon is basically a game where if you've ever played SimCity, it's like exactly like SimCity, but instead of worrying about buildings and stuff, you're really worried about or your focus is on transportation, the transportation system. And this means like, roads, train tracks, the railway,
right,
boats. I mean, everything that has some kind of transportation aspect to it, you're in charge of, and it gets really in depth. So for example, you have like this train station and you have to think about all the signals to like get trains to stop and move around. I played a little bit as a kid, but I don't think I got really into it because there was other stuff I was more into, like Civilization, for example. But the game is really interesting and there's not really anything else like it.
Yeah, it's part of the Tycoon series, though, right? Like with Railroad Tycoon and some of those other games. But I haven't played it much, but it reminds me a lot of just SimCity in general.
It really is just like that. I mean, if you look at it, it lays out same as that isometric view, and you can kind of move your stuff around, build things, and destroy things, and things get eaten by aliens.
Yeah, that was always the fun part. There was a game that when I would go to one of my friends' house, we would play. There was kind of a Civilization, like
like a SimCity kind
yeah,
of
something
thing,
like that. And you could like terraform the world and then build up a city, and then you could come in and just throw natural disasters at it. And that was the
You
fun
might
part.
be thinking of Populous.
Might have
Oh,
been.
yeah.
And it was just so fun. Like the boring part was building up everything, and then the great part was like, I'm gonna throw a hurricane, I'm gonna throw like fires, and it's just like, oh my god, this is so much fun.
Did you guys ever play Sim Ant?
No.
I've heard of it,
Oh,
and I've
dude.
listened to the music for it, but I've never played it.
Oh, that was my jam, dude. You get this little ant. Well, we're kind of skewing away from the topic here, but anyways, it's in the same vein. You kind of manage your assets and your resources, and I liked it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Anyways, who's next? I'm already lost on the rotation here. So, Gene?
Yeah. So for my next track, this is from a small little. I guess in the old days it would have been a shareware game. So this is from Sky Roads. This is Road 5. You just heard Road 5 from Sky Roads by Blue Moon Interactive, composed by Ott M. Aaloe. It's Estonian, so I don't know exactly how to pronounce that. But
I was like, are you done talking?
yeah.
That was kind of
That's probably a better pronunciation than I would have done. So.
awesome. Cool track. So it had like that Egyptian kind of sound. At first, I was a little bit thrown off. I thought there was some audio distortion because you get that reverse cymbal. It's almost like reverse white noise. So it's like,
Yeah, it's like almost playing in reverse.
yeah. And no, it's pretty cool. It's got this kind of like trancey kind of
Right.
Like I feel like I'm going into some kind of deep, zone. I don't know.
I thought of like a sweat lodge or like getting a massage or something like that.
Yeah,
like it had
yeah,
that very
yeah.
mellow kind of trancey, like breathe with the beats and stuff like that feel to it, which I liked. I thought it was very different from anything we've really played, so I liked it.
Yeah, I like it too.
Yeah, actually, one of the reasons why I wanted to bring this track, number one, I've been listening to this since '93 when it came out.
Awesome.
I've probably heard the whole soundtrack on repeat for hours and hours over the years, but also there's a really interesting story. So Blue Moon is a really small developer. This is one of the only games they made, but the way these tracks were composed is they were originally written for a tracker on Amiga, but intended to go to PC. And there were some issues with the conversion of the files. That's why you have that weird reverse symbol. You rarely get that. And it was sort of like, you can actually read this on the website, and they're like, well, no, we kind of just left it in because it sounded pretty cool.
Yeah.
I thought it was pretty cool. At first I was thrown off, but
Yeah, it gives it like this kind of otherworldly spiritual feel that this track kind of has. Like, I've never played this game, so I don't know anything about it, but I guess if I had to pick like what kind of road this song makes me imagine is like some type of desert, like out in the middle of nowhere, kind of wandering type feel.
pyramids
Yeah.
and stuff. Yeah.
Well, you're not too far off. You fly around in space on basically just flat platforms. You're just driving off into the distance, and the goal is to get to a tunnel at the end. And
Well, that sounds completely different.
Well,
You're
no, I mean,
flying
like,
around
you're just
your
going
ships.
off into the distance. It's like space. It's very sparse and empty. All you got
Right,
is
right.
this big background picture and then like just the road you're driving on.
Yeah,
That's
I think
it.
that's more my fault. I forgot that it was Sky Road, and
Oh,
not just
but-
a road.
Yeah.
So
No, I have actually played this game before. I vaguely remember it's almost like a rail, like an obstacle course, right?
is this the
Like
one where you're kind of
flying-
like dodging walls and stuff?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, I think I saw you play this.
Yeah, I think I played it with you, like on Raspberry Pi, maybe.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah, what's really interesting is that a lot of other games, you die a lot in this game, but the music will just keep looping. So you get a little bit frustrated, but it's like, oh no, the music's just going to calm me down. I'm just going to keep going.
like
So when
it.
you die, it continues to play. It doesn't
Yeah,
restart.
yeah.
Oh, that's nice. I like that when
That's
that
kinda cool.
happens.
Yeah. Any other thoughts about this game? You've been playing it since '93.
Well,
so.
I mean, not like not continuously, but if you like the game and you have a particular favorite track, just like quit the level out and then start it again. You'll maybe cycle to the one you like a little better.
That's awesome. Okay, so let's move on to our next track. James, you're next, right?
Yeah, so this will be my last track since we only picked two each, you and I. So this is a track called Intergalactic Travel 2 from Solar Winds: The Escape. You just heard Intergalactic Travel 2 from Solar Winds: The Escape on PC, composed by Dan Froelich.
This is incredible, dude.
Yeah.
Oh, this is so dark. That buzz, man. Oh, totally just making my soul just feel heavy. It
Yeah.
was good. I liked it.
It gives me chills. I really like this track a lot.
It sounds very spatial and very open, even though it's a mono track.
Mhm.
It's hard to believe sometimes. We were talking about that on our Illusion Blaze episode, that it sounds like you're getting some kind of stereo effect when you're not.
Right.
And this is very clever use of manipulating the channels to create this more open space, even though it's just mono.
Yeah. This is another YM3812 track, and I think he really used it well.
Yeah.
Yeah, I just love how dark and moody it is. I mean, I think this chip really excels in that kind of... It's a little bit gritty, a little bit grungy, but something about it just puts me in this almost meditative state whenever I hear tracks like this. And and then when that marimba sort of thing comes in, and it's very dissonant and minor, and it just sounds so... I don't know, it's very satisfying.
It's very
Yeah.
satisfying. I like that.
Yeah, no, I mean, this track is, it's very dark and moody and menacing, and it just continues to get more and more. And I like when that kind of like staticky bass drops out, and you're like, oh, like hope. And then it's like, nope. And we're going to go right back into that kind of dark and dangerous, like it feels like something's going to get you. So,
Right. And, I think a lot of this sound, too, the characteristics of the sound chip, we've talked about this before, kind of go back to the different ways that you can manipulate the sine waves, right? Or create that, half and quarter sine wave, and really makes it almost like this, its own unique kind of sawtooth. So you get these very buzzy kind of like satisfying kind of sounds.
Right.
And I like that. And I think that this track is a very good example of what the sound chip can produce. Anyways, I think we're on to
This is another Gene
yeah,
track,
another Gene
yeah.
track. God, there's only 3 of us, and I've already lost track of where we're at. So good. Anyways, Gene, what do you got for us?
So I have a pick from a game called Dune. Many of you might know this.
Oh, Dune.
But
Awesome.
I specifically actually decided to pick the OPL3 or YMF262, which is a richer, fuller version of the 3812. So there's more channels.
Kind of
More-
like the next evolution.
Oh, yeah.
Right.
And you will really hear the difference on this compared to a lot of the tracks, because everything up to this point has been the 3812, the OPL2 as it's also called.
And don't forget the beeper.
Yeah, of course, the
Yep.
beeper, yeah, big upgrade. So, yeah, this is Dune Variation from the Dune soundtrack. You just heard Dune Variation off of the Dune soundtrack composed for PC, written by Stéphane Picq and published by Cryo Entertainment.
Boy, talk about dark. I
Ooh.
mean, this is like oppressive dark.
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah.
it's really, really heavy. It's just really cool, though.
Yeah, you can't listen to this without just closing your eyes and just kind of melting away. It's very ominous. It's got these very worldly or like earthy, organic instruments.
Mm-hmm.
I really enjoyed it. I love the soundtrack, but I've never heard the Adlib Gold version, so this is really awesome.
Yeah, I think you'll probably notice a few things. It's in stereo for one, but also there's more tracks. The range of sounds is bigger, and the whole thing just feels enormous.
Yeah.
Right.
You can listen to the OPL2 version, and it still sounds really good, but this one just, you close your eyes, and yeah, you're somewhere else.
Right. I would have played this on like a OPL2 or maybe the AW32. I'm not sure. I might have jumped ship at that point over to in Sonic, I think. So I'm not sure, but I had never had this sound card, so Yeah, no, very cool, man. Wow.
Yeah,
so rich.
It's like an entire adventure just in this one track.
Yeah.
Yeah, Stéphane Picq is a really interesting composer. He doesn't really do much game composition, but he was really big in the early 90s. He has a background in world music, and I think if you look at his website, he's proficient in like 60 or 70 world music instruments. He just really loves that otherworldly sound, and it's no surprise that they picked him for a game like Dune, which is,
Right.
That's all about that whole universe.
Oh.
Yeah, no, I mean, when Brian had mentioned it had this like earthy tone, I was thinking like it has like all these complexities and stuff of something like, say, like the Deus Ex original soundtrack, where it's like so much is going on, but that's very much more futuristic and kind of techy, whereas this has a similar kind of feel, except for it's much more earthy and kind of like tribal-like, I guess,
Right,
which is
right,
really
right.
cool.
Yeah, I hadn't heard this before, and that's always like so amazing.
Yeah.
Now I want to like go through it all on this sound chip or this sound hardware and just like absorb it.
Yeah.
Very cool. Anything
Yep.
else about Dune? Did you play Dune?
I didn't, but it is sort of a resource management kind of game. You sort of control your colonies, you build them up. It actually looks kind of complicated, but
Yeah. No, it's
Yeah.
I actually really love this game. I
Yeah.
thought it was excellent. But we can go into a whole show.
yeah, no,
about
I
that.
haven't
Yeah.
played it, but I actually am more familiar with the composer and his music than the game itself. I've watched the movie, I've read the book, at least the first one. So I like the Dune universe, but actually never really played the game. So Stéphane Picq wrote the soundtrack for a few other games around this time: KGB, Mega Race, Atlantis, and Lost Eden. And do yourself a favor and check out the Lost Eden soundtrack. It's so good.
Yeah, I was listening to that actually before we did this episode the other day. Yeah.
Oh, no kidding.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Same thing with KGB. That was another one that I was going through.
Yeah, KGB I know, but I hadn't heard Lost Eden yet. That's awesome. Anyways, I think we're on to our last, my last track, right? And so this is actually from a game that I want to do a whole show on, because it's
Nice.
just it's so good, and I've been wanting to do this for so long, but it just fit the theme, and you guys might know it. It's called Jazz Jackrabbit, the game, and the track I picked is called Industrious. All right, that was Industrious from Jazz Jackrabbit. Came out on DOS in 1994. Developed and published by Epic Mega Games. Composed by Robert Allen. I love this.
Yeah, no, you're definitely on a jazzy kick, and
I
with
was-
that title, I mean, what else can you expect? To
Yeah,
see jazz.
I was on a jazz kind of funk kick
Yeah.
like the last 4 or 5 days, and so I just rolled with it. Just went with it.
Super funky. I mean, like I said, I don't have much experience on the PC, and so the first game this song brought to mind was something like Toe Jam and Earl. It's like very like that clap, and very
Right.
funky, and I could just imagine like walking around in the game or something, and just like having this attitude about it.
Yeah.
Oh man, that funk shuffle. Whatever happened to that? I mean, we don't hear much. We hear a lot of funk and jazz, but it's this really kind of a little bit broken style. I really love that. I'd heard this soundtrack years and years ago, but I don't remember this one. So And that second half was really cool, where it was like the piano just came in. I just sort of smiled. I'm like, oh,
Yeah.
there's a way more to this now coming up.
Yeah, it's actually a pretty simple track. That bass, though, man, it's all over the place.
Yeah.
It starts off just really funky, kind of slappy, and then when that kind of organ section comes in, then it turns into this walking jam session. It's just incredible. I just couldn't get enough of it.
Yeah, I was listening to the drums the whole time, but same kind of thing. It was just this really heavy hits, just really, really refreshing kind of sound.
Yeah, that's one thing that's really fun about these type of tracks is that you can kind of, on your first listen, kind of focus on like a certain instrument or just kind of take it all in, and then on second listen, you can kind of focus somewhere else. And there's so many like layers to unpeel and kind of dive into, which is really great.
Yeah. So kind of interesting thing about this track, it's actually a Scream Tracker 3 module. And Scream Tracker was basically a tracking software that was developed by Future Crew, written for DOS.
Nice.
We talk about it all the time on Impulse Project, my other podcast. But it was interesting to kind of see a module created for a game that was being sold that hadn't really been done all that much yet. And so this is kind of a neat way to kind of usher in kind of like this digital sequence music. Pretty awesome. So Robert Allen, he's an American composer that worked for Epic Mega Games. He did both game production and audio, and a handful of different titles, most notably for his composition on Jazz Jackrabbit 1 and 2 and Epic Pinball. And I guess shortly after he got his first PC, he got really into bulletin board systems like BBSs. And one of the first games he downloaded was a shareware version of Jill of the Jungle.
Oh, that just composed.
And immediately blown away. He hadn't seen or heard anything like it. And he stated that he was immediately impressed. And this is during your track.
Right.
I actually went back
the Dan
to
Froelich track.
I
Yeah.
went back to look this up, and he said, I was so impressed with Dan Froelich's music. I said, I want to do that.
Yeah, and Jill of the Jungle was his first official game, too.
Yeah. So, see, the connections there. Everything's kind of coming together. So, from a technical perspective, working on Jazz Jackrabbit and Epic Pinball, Epic was kind of moving away from, like I was saying earlier, was kind of moving away from just using, FM synthesis on the Adlib chip. And they were trying to get more sequenced audio into their games. And so this was kind of like an introduction for them. They were always trying to push the bounds of what they could do. And so using Scream Tracker, they thought, hey, this is a way that we can kind of bring this into our new releases. And it's funny because even though Scream Tracker 3 can do a ton of channels at once, they just told him you can only use 4 channels, even though you have way more to work with. And I guess they wanted to keep down the size as small as possible so that the end goal for Jazz Jackrabbit was that the whole game could kind of fit on a shareware floppy disk.
Oh, nice.
So within, just 1.44 megabytes, you can get like this whole shareware experience. And so that's why they wanted him to, be, I guess, restrained on what he could work with. But
a lot of times you see with like heavy restraints, really amazing things can come about. I mean, you see these early systems that had, color limitations or hardware limitations and sounds and stuff like that. And, you can create some really creative and fun stuff without going over the top. And sometimes it's too much and things get kind of muddy and not quite sharp or anything like that. So it's really nice to see.
Well, just look at all the Amiga music, that we play on the show, it's like all 4 channels, so, he had limitations. It's kind of funny though, that he had software to do more and they put the, they put the bar on him to do less just for that, that size requirement. But, still think the track was great. The whole soundtrack is incredible. It retains a lot of that funk, jazz, kind of fusion stuff thrown in. Did you guys ever play this game?
No.
I did, actually.
You did?
But I haven't played it in a long, long time. I remember it having a pretty good soundtrack, but I don't remember any particular tunes sort of like, running through my head over the years. But I should go back and check it out.
Yeah, you definitely should. We should do a show on this someday because it's really fun. I remember, we were talking about BBSs earlier, and this was a game that I found on a BBS. It was, shareware, Jazz Jackrabbit. I was already I want to say I was in junior high maybe when this came out in 1994. And so I downloaded this. I played it. I thought it was a blast. It's kind of like you're playing as Sonic, but with like a gun.
Okay.
So yeah, it's not as polished as Sonic. It's a little more floaty controls, but it's really, really good game. When I downloaded it, I was looking for DOS stuff all the time, and I was one avenue was connecting online and being able to get these things, which you really couldn't do with consoles. So it was always fun for me to see like, oh, what's new, what's fresh, what's coming out. And this was one of those titles. And I absolutely loved it. I had a good time playing this game.
I remember really liking the color palette in this game. It's super bright and vibrant, and there's just something a little bit sillier, like this rabbit who's fighting a tortoise or
it's
a
like
hare.
Bright green.
It's tortoise versus hare kind of thing.
Yeah.
It's kind of... and there's like this strong techno vibe, not like to the music, but just everything's mechanical and electrified towards the later worlds. It's got a very cool aesthetic.
Kind of like a counterculture like aesthetic to it.
Yeah.
It's kind of funny that, I mean, I don't really know much about this game outside of the music, but that it's like a tortoise and the hare type story, but it's from the hare's perspective, which is normally the bad guy in those stories. So it's kind of neat.
Yeah. Anyways, so I think we're moving on to our last track of the day. Gene, what do you got for us?
So I'm going to take this in a little bit of a different direction. This is going to be the Wolfgang Ritter theme from Gabriel Knight, Sins of the Fathers.
Nice.
You just heard the Wolfgang Ritter theme from Gabriel Knight, Sins of the Fathers, which was released by Sierra Online in 1993 for DOS, Macintosh, and Windows, and composed by Robert Holmes.
Very dark. It's kind of what I expected with the name like Sins of the Fathers. So, but it was like very epically dark, and those flutes were really beautiful, and everything was really kind of heavy, lots of percussion, and those really stood out. I really like that.
I agree with you. I really like the heavy undertone, and then those like kind of pan flutes coming in just gave the track like this dark natural beauty. And I'm starting to get an idea of what Gene's into with this kind of stuff. Excellent. Why'd you pick this?
So I actually just recently replayed the remake of Gabriel Knight, which came out a few years ago, and I remember thinking the music in this was so good, and I wanted to actually play a version of it from the MT32, which you guys have talked about it more, and I actually am not that knowledgeable about it, but basically I wanted to hear what they kind of had as their vision of the realization of these tracks, because it wouldn't be you couldn't do it justice in these FM chips that they were playing. So I really wanted to hear this fully orchestrated version. And actually, the new versions were all composed by the same guy, Robert Holmes. He wrote the music for the entire Gabriel Knight series. He actually continues to work with Jane Jensen, who wrote the story for Gabriel Knight, and he actually still does work for her with their new studio, Pinkerton Road, which is the studio that re-released Gabriel Knight. They've also done Gray Matter, Cognition, Mobius, Empire Rising, and a few other kinds of point-and-click adventure games, hidden object games, that sort of thing. So he's not actually that active in the game music world. He has a lot more independent albums, but I really love the work that he did for especially the first Gabriel Knight, but the other two are also really great soundtracks.
No, I haven't played Gabriel Knight.
Neither have I.
I must have missed it somehow, but I know the game. I just never got around to it. So can you tell us about the game?
Sure, yeah. So Gabriel Knight it was released by Sierra, so any of you who are cringing out there, it's not actually a game where you can die 5 seconds into the game. It's it is a point-and-click adventure game, but it's written essentially as a novel that plays out through a point-and-click game. You start off, you find out that there are these murders that have just happened in town. Your character is a sort of out-of-work writer that's trying to find his next story, and through the course of adventures, he unravels some pretty dark and sinister things that are going on in his native New Orleans, and some things about his own history. So it's a really, really cool story, and if you can't play the original game, definitely play the remake. They did a really good job of capturing the...
What did they re-release it on?
Just about everything, pretty much. PC, Mac. I mean, it's on Steam. So,
right, okay.
But mostly PC platforms.
I might have it, actually.
Yeah.
Maybe in my Steam catalog. I don't know.
It's very likely, yeah. But it's a worthy remake.
Awesome. Well, I think that about wraps up the show.
Yeah.
A lot of really good music all over the place, man.
Yeah, I can't wait to go back and listen to this episode again.
Awesome. So today we covered a ton of different stuff that was written in the 90s for Windows and DOS. If you want to know more about the show, you can find us online at pixelatedaudio.com for our show notes and all the tracks we played.
Yeah, also all the links to all of our social media, including Twitch and Patreon, stuff like that.
Right. And if you like the show, you can leave a review on iTunes. We always appreciate that. Like James mentioned, we started a Patreon, and we are really excited with how it's going so far. And if you want to throw some cash our way, you like this show and you want to support it, patreon.com/pixelatedaudio. You can go for as low as like $1 a month, which is like, what, $12 a year?
Yeah.
But it definitely supports the show and helps us out and encourages us to keep going.
Yeah, and if you're new to the show, you can check out some of our past episodes like Mitsume Gatoru, where we had Hiroyuki Iwatsuki on. There was also Outzone with Tatsuya Uemura, and recently Aromana no Kaseki, which I want to give a quick shout out to White Hat and Kha'Zix, because I just recently found out that they are speedrunning this game, which we mentioned we would love to see someone do it because this game is incredibly broken. I mean, they're clipping through walls and cutting through half the levels. It's amazing.
They have torn this game apart, and it is so hilarious to watch.
Yeah.
Because all that stuff that we completely hated about the game, they're using to their advantage.
Yeah.
So
right now, the time is 8 minutes and 19 seconds. So,
jeez. Awesome. Yeah. Well, we've been really lucky, and we have some awesome stuff lined up down the road. Some more interviews and some obscure tracks and games that we're excited to share. So, yeah, I'm super pumped for the future of Pixelated Audio.
Yeah.
I'm looking forward to hearing more episodes.
Yeah, and we're hoping to get you on some more episodes in the future as well.
Anytime, yeah.
Yeah. So, also want to give a big thanks to Gene for trucking out here to the Pixelated Audio studio and sharing some tracks with us today. We had a lot of fun.
Yeah, and giving us the idea for this episode as well.
Right.
Yeah, this was a ton of fun. I'm glad we were able to do this. I think there's plenty of themes we can pick, even just staying within just retro games anyway. So there's a lot more to come.
Yeah, we hope we can have you on for future episodes too. It was a lot of fun.
Yeah, definitely.
All right, so we're going to put you on the spot here. We're going to have you pick from you brought a lot of tracks today, and a bunch we're not playing. So why don't we end the show with another track from you? What do you got for us?
Sure. This is Sorcerian Forever by Falcom. The track is called The Uninvited Visitors, Dubious Island, and this one is written for the OPL3 or YMF 262 chip.
Awesome. Thank you guys so much for listening, and we'll see you back in a few weeks for the next episode.